So most everybody knows me. I'm Jerrod Bailey. This is my wife, Lindsay. We were going to talk tonight about a little bit about the arc of our faith and sort of how we find ourselves here in this outpouring. And I think just when you kind of hear foundationally how we started, then you might appreciate how we're here. And you may identify with some of that along the way, because we've had a lot of struggles through our lives, very similar struggles that you guys have had. And God has met us in different phases, and He's grown and built us. And now we're here, and we're going to be starting some ministry stuff here as well. And that's part of our background, why we're going to kind of walk you through our arc to let you know a little bit of the background of this sort of ministry, this prayer ministry that we're going to be starting here. Sound good?
Yeah.
Okay, so let's see, it was a dark and stormy night. We come from two different backgrounds. I was really non-religious growing up. My folks are in the back there. They can attest to that. I wasn't thumping any Bibles or anything. In fact, I didn't really have a lot of interaction that I recall with God or with Christians in general. In fact, I would say that I was, by high school and college, I was certainly an atheist, but I didn't like Christians very much. I didn't like them because they weren't particularly nice people, and then the God that they believed in didn't strike me as a particularly nice or loving or present God or whatever. I certainly didn't see Him moving in their lives. So, then I meet this girl, and she has this love affair with her God. And he is having this love affair with her, and I'm like, oh my gosh, who is this God, and who's this crazy Christian girl? And that sort of opened this door for me to walk into my faith. But you came from a different background.
Yeah, so I grew up evangelical, very strong Christian family, just non-denominational, Bible believing. Grew up in private Christian schools, and had a very strong biblical foundation, learned Bible verses all the time. And, when you're young, you get to an age where you start looking at the adults and saying, okay, why don't you sell me on what you're selling, show me why I should believe what you believe. Because when you're very young, you just happen to believe what your parents believe. But when I really started questioning, and I started sitting back, and I saw a lot of adults who loved God, loved the Word, loved a great sermon, and would hear these people, oh, the best sermon, I just learned so much. And I would wait to see what would happen next. Nothing would happen next. It was head knowledge, and nothing else. I never saw it walked out. And this is across school, teachers, anybody. So I just was like, maybe the invitation is to just listen to sermons and agree, I guess. But I had a problem with that because, once I started getting into high school and really wrestling with peer pressure and all these other things, and the world is asking me to agree with them, and God's asking me to agree. And the only thing, I knew what the world was offering me, but I went to Christianity and I said, what are you offering me? And the thing that I kept getting back is just behave like this and look like this. And I couldn't do either of those things. I didn't look like other Christians. I didn't think like other Christians. I didn't talk like other Christians. The behavior thing just did not work for me. And so I became so completely frustrated that I said to my mom, if that's Christianity, I hope nobody ever calls me a Christian. And I just walked away. I was tired. of struggling. And once I got into college, I found a book called The Sacred Romance by John Eldredge. And it broke open this romance between God and I, of God absolutely pursuing me, the God of the universe pursuing me, not me trying to fix myself up so that he'll think I was okay. And I mean, it was like a real love affair. Like, we have songs, like certain love songs that I've never told anybody. I've never told Jerrod what they are. They're just ours. And I journaled just the things that he would do with me. And I was living in Colorado at the time. And so it was just days hiking Garden of the Gods with the Braveheart soundtrack in my ear and the God of the universe, and just madly fell in love with the Lord. And it was just the most special relationship ever. And this is when I was in Colorado. Then I had to come back to finish my undergrad at ASU. And that's when I met Jerrod, right off of this just incredible love affair that I had started with the Lord. And it was an interesting meeting. We had mutual friends, and just kept talking and get to know each other. And
I was feeling bad for her. I wanted to help this poor Christian girl out, and because I took philosophy 101 in college, so therefore I knew everything. And then so I run into this girl who's on fire, and she completely judo threw me. And next thing you know, I'm running into the church, and it wasn't easy, right? I mean, it wasn't easy. We courted for a long time, for many years. My parents saw the highs and the lows. And there was stuff that I was bringing into that relationship, right? Things that, like addictions and things that I started with walking into that. So, it was not all roses, but I can say that my foundation of Christ was in this really loving God, right? And so that was my only experience of God. I didn't come with all the baggage that she came with. I had this great, amazing God, and he loved me, and I loved him, and that was sort of our foundation, right? Who is God, right? I was even going to write something.
Yeah, you need some whiteboard.
I need to write on a whiteboard if you're going to put a whiteboard around me. So, who he is, right? That was kind of foundational. And so here we are. We're actually in Colorado. We know John Eldredge, this author, and all of a sudden we're steeped in this world of magic love affair and all that stuff, but also like a ton of warfare. It was kind of like, hey, yes, the God of the universe loves you, but you are in a battle. And he wants to see you through that battle, but you're in this battle, in the spiritual battle. And it was a big part of this sort of place that we were in, is you're constantly battling. In fact, he had a quote.
Yeah, so his number one thing he would say is, if you're not getting shot at, then you're not in the battle. And so for me, I started getting really heavy into spiritual warfare stuff, and feeling like that was a sign of holiness, to like take on the devil, and I'm gonna, just fight it out. And I took so much of that on myself, and I became really seeped in it, and it was very hard and very heavy to carry for a very long time. But that was just my perception, that warfare means good things, are happening.
Yeah, it should hurt.
Didn't feel good.
It should hurt a little bit to be a Christian.
Yeah, it was hard at that point.
But here we are, and then we discovered, or we were introduced to something called Freedom Immersion, which is a weekend that the people who invited us didn't tell us what it was. It was very like, we're not going to tell you what it is. And we're like, why not? They said, you need to come here, because at this point we're now married. Yeah. We're now married. We live in Colorado, and we have Ava, and we are really not getting along. Yeah. Like, we are using the D word in our marriage, and we're fighting all the time, and there's just nothing good about it. And somebody said, yeah, you guys need to come to this Freedom Immersion weekend. And we're like, great, sign us up. We booked 2 tickets and we came down, sight unseen or whatever. We didn't know anything about what we were walking into. And so we walk into this weekend, and it was a pretty monumental weekend. It was, this is sort of the beginning of the next chapter for us. It was essentially learning that, yes, there's a God of the universe and he loves us, but he also wants to talk to us. He wants to tell us about how he loves us. And he wants to have like a conversation with us. And this is like a two-way street kind of thing. And we're in this weekend, and there's people, there's prayer teams, and they're praying with us, but they're praying over us. And God is praying, so they claim, God is praying through them, right? And so we are not sure what to do with this, but we're hearing a lot of truth, what seems like truth, and it's kind of rocking our worlds. And when they call it Freedom Weekend, it really is kind of the taste of what we got, was this idea of freedom. And so it kind of segued into our next chapter of, who God is great, but he also wants to talk. And listen, right? So some really cool things happened in this season, and we started pursuing this for a number of years. One of the things is our marriage got considerably better. I don't know if you want to see my notes either, but a couple of things. We had this idea that God designs us. We are designed before we're even born. He designs us. He knits us in the womb. And one of the things that they did in this weekend is they would pray over that. People who never met us would pray over our original design. Jerrod's original design. Lindsay's original design. Jerrod and Lindsay's marriage and how that was designed. Ava and her design. And Aiden and August. And it was really wild because they were people we never met before were literally reading our mail to us. Like, oh yeah, God designed you this way. And we're like, oh my gosh, I've never met you, but that's absolutely true. In fact, we brought some of our notes. So we were getting ready for this talk. And Lindsay goes, I have all the original designs. So she pulls them out of the folder and we start reading them. And there's kind of some interesting ones in here. I don't know if you have some that...
I have a couple. So I just had a lot of questions about my identity for a long time. And, the way that I made decisions was other people would say, hey, this is a great group, you should do it. Or this is a great volunteer opportunity, you should do it. And that's how I made decisions. I would listen to other people's opinions and do that. And this was a moment where God said, this is how you were made, and this is how these are your missions, and this is how I want to use you. And a couple of things. This was 2012. He saw a picture of the Lord sharing secrets with a little girl, and like whispering in her ear. And you project a safety, and healing comes from the feeling of safety. Those wounded find healing because it's within you. So it's literally God saying, I want to share my secrets with you to heal others. And I'm like, whoa, like that's pretty cool. Multiple years, because I've had my original design prayed for, one of the first things people always say to me is, you are designed for joy, which always makes me laugh because my middle name is Joy. And when I was, in college, I was at an event and somebody said, God is restoring your name right now. I don't know who you are, but God is restoring your name. And I felt God say, I was the furthest thing from joy at that moment in my life, but I heard him say, it's you. You are joy, and I will prove to you that you are joy. And so from then on, every original design I got, somebody said joy, like one of the first things. And I'd go, yeah, I get it, okay. And they're like, wow. And I'm like, you don't understand. You're about the 8th person to say that. So that's really fun. But one of the most important things that were birthed through this original design was my mother's heart. And it says not just your kids, but other people's kids. You see kids through God's eyes. They feel the love of God coming through you. You have the strength to love kids who don't have a mother's love. That was the moment that my dream of fostering, the seed was planted. I didn't know that it was fostering at that point at all. But something was planted the moment they spoke that over me. And God used other people and circumstances to pour that out. But every time I was confronted with it, he would remind me of this word, of my mother's heart for other children, not just my own. And so these words have such incredible power. It's God saying, it's not necessarily a word for today. This was 2012, and we just became foster parents for the first time this year. So it's so fun to see how he plants these seeds, and we get to just not do anything, but watch what he's doing. And then look back and go, oh my gosh, you totally knew back then that Jakari was the child that was going to come into our home. And how fun is that?
So I had some fun ones. I have
some of yours too. Can I read one of yours that I know you won't read?
Sure.
Number 1, he's marked by extreme intelligence. I mean, come on. How is that fair that God gave him the design of extreme intelligence? I'm kind of jealous of that one. But.
When I was growing up, I was a pretty lonely kid. For being a twin, I was a very lonely kid. I didn't have any friends. And I remember in high school, there was a time, Dad, you and I was in the basement of our house and I was crying. My dad walks down. He's like, "What's wrong?" I'm like, "I don't have any friends. I have no friends. I'm so lonely." And I remember at the time he goes, "Well, Jerrod, you're a lot like me. I was like that when I was your age. You're a lone wolf." And he didn't know what he spoke over me at the time, but I took that name, and I went through many years saying, giving myself permission to be lonely, and I called myself, that whole lone wolf name kind of followed me. And then we got our designs, and it's following me up until I'm getting this original design. And I don't know if you brought that one.
I don't think I brought it, but we had just moved back to Phoenix and really didn't know anyone or have many friendships at the time when this was prayed over you. Yeah,
and so it was essentially like you will have lots of friends. You are someone who makes good friends.
Many men will say Jerrod is my best friend.
Yeah.
And we're like,
I'm like, well, that's not me. Clearly, you're misinterpreting the Holy Spirit. But if you guys know me now, I do. I have lots of friends. I have lots of very good, dear friends that I love dearly, and they love me. So that's one of them. And another one was just funny because I totally forgot about this. If you've known me for the last, or forever, yeah, okay.
Are you talking about this one?
Yeah. So this is, how long ago is this? I don't know, 6 years ago, something like that. 6 years ago. We got this crazy word, and I'm like, this is definitely not me. You definitely misheard the Holy Spirit. They said, Jerrod, you're a worshiper. You teach people how to worship. They were seeing tape player, turntable, whatever. If you guys don't, for those who don't know me, I am not a worshiper. Until the invitation that I reluctantly said yes to, I was not that dude.
Unless you consider Neil Diamond worship, that was about.
That was the extent of my worship, yeah. And so it's just funny. It's just funny how, and if you don't know, sometimes I'm up here singing. It's crazy how God works, and he sits outside of time, and he knows us in ways that he delights in watching the unfolding, right, in the discovery of
well, and I have to say, because I think that was actually the very first time we were prayed for. Strangers, we had never met them. They took one second to pray and looked at Jerrod and said, I see you with a microphone in your hand. And God said, you worship like David worships. And we couldn't stop laughing because Jerrod loves karaoke. And so for a stranger to say, I immediately see you with a microphone in your hand. And God loves that about you. God designed you that way. It's not just a fluke that, you like karaoke. It starts to shape your identity. And these things that you think are a coincidence, you start to really say, Lord, is this from you? Is this actually you doing this in me? And it starts to shift everything in your life and choices that you make.
When you feel like God has been telling you how he's designed you, and he's telling you how he's designed your spouse or your kids or your marriage, it becomes impossible to look at those things the way that you did before you heard those things. And so our marriage completely started to flip around, and I started to see her the way that God sees her. I couldn't help it. And we started to see our marriage as something that God designed, and we were starting to live that out. There's some other things that our marriage was prayed over, like for example, we would be the home that all the kids come to in the neighborhood. And that, in fact, is exactly what our home always is. Wherever we live, we're the home that all the kids come to. We also didn't just receive prayer over the course of the time. For a long time we did. We just received it. We're like, tell us more. We started to then become a prayer team. So we were invited to do that. And that's really super scary when you get invited to actually start praying for people through the Spirit. But we did that. And God started showing up. And God started saying, hey, you guys really do talk to me just like everybody else does, and you can hear from me. And so we started kind of turning that into a ministry. We actually opened our home for a year, and every month we had people come into our home, and we called it the gym, because you go work it out, work out your muscle, work out your prayer muscle. And we would just bring strangers in our home. We would sit around and we'd pray over each other, and we'd ask God for words. And that year was incredible. We saw a marriage that was marked, it was a 48-year-old marriage, marked by significant abuse. This couple were as broken as you can be, and we saw them utterly redeemed. We saw them, I remember they came through our living room, and we prayed over. It was just one of them. They couldn't even be in the same room together. It was the wife. And we prayed over her, and you could just see her just break right there in the living room, and she was crying, and we were like, oh my gosh, what happened? And she said, no, this is good. Thank you for this word. We walked in. We saw them a couple months later, and it was like a brand new couple. It's like they had gotten younger by 20 years.
Their faces look different.
They were holding each other. They were like bright, smiling. I've never seen the guy smile.
Yeah, it's very stoic and very bitter.
And we said, what is going on? And she said, that word that we had in your living room has transformed our marriage.
She said, I hadn't told you this, but I had already talked to my lawyer and started the divorce proceedings, and this word, I just gave it a shot, and
she ran home and told him.
Yeah.
And next thing you know, they're like walking in this word. So anyway, there's a lot of power there, right? And that was sort of in this season of learning how to talk to God was really, really important to us. And so when we talk about this prayer ministry here, we're going to be doing stuff like this. We're going to be praying for you. If any of you want words of knowledge, discernment, things like that, we will play that role. Some of you also know how to do that. You may want to learn how to do that yourself, but that's going to be what we're going to do. We're going to, basically. Either we're going to provide it and also give you the opportunity to learn it yourselves if you'd like to. Okay. And so that kind of segues into the current season. Okay, so this is where, we met Angela and we started this idea of true and truth, of identity, right? And yeah, we had a lot of prayer over us, but really learning how to see and know who you are through your relationship with Christ, and then agreeing with it, right? So it's like around all of this is learning agreement. And what really, that says agreement.
I should write next.
You should write next time.
You got that?
The power of this has been transformational. For me, I mentioned before bringing into the marriage some addiction. I was freed of that over a year ago. Utterly freed of it. Like, done, gone. And it wasn't until I came into agreement with these things that I really experienced how powerful my God is. Like, he's super powerful. He literally can do it all. I didn't even have to try for it. I just simply had to agree with him. And so I can expound on that later or on the side if you guys are ever curious. But
Yeah, I think for me, again, even when I got into some of this stuff, I started striving in it and trying, like, how do I do this? And I loved an analogy that I think it was Bill Johnson gave about how when kids are young, parents will give them money to buy them a Christmas gift so that the kids can have the pleasure of handing their parents a Christmas gift, but the parents paid for it. And that's God's Father's heart towards us. Everything that he gives us, everything that we give him, it's because he gave us first. And so that was such a light bulb moment for me, because I realized, it wasn't about me anymore. It was about his ability to change those things in me. It was about his ability to make me joy when I didn't feel joy or I didn't have the circumstances like I wanted. And for me to agree. So I think one of the biggest miracles in my mind was when you were talking about our marriage. I didn't want to interrupt you, but one of the words over our marriage, and we got like an 8-part marriage design. And I looked at that design and I just cried and cried and cried, because none of it was what I saw day to day. None of it. Marked by unity. We couldn't even have a conversation. And this person said that we were marked by unity. It felt cruel to have somebody say we're marked by unity when we couldn't get along. And I was just like, did you do this just to like tease me? Of like, show me all the things that I could have if I was a better Christian, but not yet, and God just kept saying, I'm going to do this list. You're not going to do this list. I'm going to do this list. And so all I did every day, over myself, I got his design. I got new words constantly, because God's always doing new stuff. It's not about just always revisiting the past and what he was doing then. And I would just declare it and agree with things that I did not see. And we'd still fight. And I'd go, you know what, though? Somehow we're marked by unity. And that agreement, I call it like I went to sleep and he did brain surgery, or he did heart surgery while I was asleep. I don't know. It wasn't a book that I didn't do anything. But it was an absolute miracle to me. And so I think when you have those moments with the Lord, you need to always bring those miracles back to mind, because he's going to walk you into a harder season where it's time for upgrade. And that's the other thing I've been getting from the Lord, that I love that Angela's been there for me on this. And she even talked about it here, about when you start a new season, you feel so unprepared. You feel so unequipped. And, you know, especially for us with fostering right now, for the past few months, I have felt so utterly unequipped for what God has asked me to do. And there has been so many tears and so much doubt. And, you know, then reading that, I go, okay, I think I'm on the right path, but this is rough. And God keeps turning it into such a positive. Yay, you're struggling. Yay, such good news. It's so great when you get to struggle with the Lord, because he's doing something incredible at that moment. And you can't see it at that moment, but he always, when I'm complaining the loudest, he's cheering louder over me and going, you are going to love this one. You are going to love what I'm doing here. And it really does bring so much peace that I'm not doing this. It's not my strength. It's not my biblical knowledge. It's not my head knowledge. It's not my psychology degree that I wish I would have gotten so that I could deal with this. Like, why didn't you give me a degree? And he always goes, why? So you have to unlearn, so I could reteach you and have you unlearn everything you learned. This is an exploring. This is an adventure with me.
Hey, real quick, time check. My timer got all wonky. How much time do we have left?
Oh, we have Greg's phone.
Oh, is there a timer going on this? Okay.
No timer.
Oh, man.
It's just recording.
I almost had a train of thought.
So what is our... Okay, 6 minutes.
Okay. Upgrade. And so now I just find myself in so many situations that God just keeps going. He says one of two things right now. Either have another thought when the thoughts are really negative. Why don't you have another thought? Or this is the moment, this is the place of your upgrade. How excited are you? And that is probably for me right now the biggest lens shift. That there is no negatives in the kingdom. There's no negatives. There's no mess ups in the kingdom. You can't mess up. He moves you along or he overcomes it, but you're not going to mess it up with him. And how freeing. It takes all the expectations and all the accusations and it just falls right off of you. And they can't stick anymore when you're agreeing with that. And when Satan sees you go, woohoo, this was horrible. Like, what's he going to do to you then? Like, he's got nothing.
Yeah, and that's another thing. That warfare that we practiced, way back here over the years, in the revelation, that warfare's kind of gone away. Now we just sort of constantly look at God and we ask, how do I stay in alignment? Like how do I just say yes to you in this moment? And Satan just can't really operate there. It's like a vacuum. He just can't do anything with that. And so we don't agonize in this spiritual warfare realm anymore. We just really try to operate in this place of alignment. It's been really freeing. Let me see if there's any other tidbits. Tell them about the Disney cruise.
Oh gosh, yes. Angela reminded me of this. So I'll try to make the longest story ever really succinct. So we're learning this, and this was my first opportunity to take this for a spin and see how does it work in everyday life. So my mom paid for my entire family to go on a Disney cruise last January. We were supposed to fly into Texas, and there was a big storm, kind of not as big as this one, but there was a big storm that was canceling all the flights. So after waiting in the airport for 7 hours, and they kept saying, we promise we'll get you there, they finally canceled the flight at like 9 p.m. our ship was leaving with or without us, 3 p.m. the next day. And they're saying, flights are all canceled. So all these people have to be rerouted somehow, and all the flights are booked. No openings. And we all started shaking because it is tens and tens of thousands of dollars that were out, plus a family trip that we've never done, ever. My family's never done anything like this. So it's pretty serious that we make it. And I go into complete negativity. Well, let's just go home. I don't have, we've been here 7 hours. Sorry, Mom. Give up. And that's my default. And God just said, what if it's not your default? What if we do something different? What if you have a brilliant thought instead of a negative thought, as Graham Cook calls them, a brilliant thought? And so I said, okay, so what would a brilliant thought be? Well, that we all could get seats on totally sold out flights. We're sitting on the plane on 6 seats on a totally sold out flight about 2 hours later, flying to not Dallas, which is where we were supposed to be going.
No, Houston. We flew into Dallas instead.
Okay, we're supposed to go to Houston.
Which is 2 hours away from
We found
Houston,
a ticket to Dallas. So we said, just get us in Texas, and we'll see what Jesus does with the rest. So we fly into the wrong city, and we land at 1:30 in the morning.
With little kids.
With little kids who have been at the airport all day. And we were gonna rent a car. Well, it's raining cats and dogs. The storm is still going on. And we're exhausted. It sounds very treacherous. So we decide to call an Uber. And I'm like, oh dear God, how are you gonna do this? And he's like, just have a brilliant thought. Have a brilliant thought.